Hello everyone! In this video you will see the continuation of the manhwa titled Seduce the Fox. Part 6. Please put a like and subscribe if you like this video. Your participation will help our channel. Thank you. Go to the Seduce the Fox playlist to watch past episodes. Let's go!
Wu Jin, noticing that the paper was fresh, read the letter. He was shocked by what he had written, and he dropped his hands, still holding the envelope. Su Ra had not seen her father for several days and was very worried about him. She had asked the guards to let her into his room, but they replied that the head was in a strange state and would not let anyone in. A few days ago they visited the village of foxes, and after that trip he was not himself, almost did not speak, went deep into himself, does not give orders and always sits on his bed. Everyone was worried about his depressed state. In the present, it was reported to the white fox that Li Zhang had started spreading about the fox blood and its properties among the people. He tiredly put his face on his hands, not knowing what he should do with this young man. The maid said that the situation has gotten out of hand. The foxes are not happy. The Lord had to return from the battlefield because of the Lord's condition, and if the humans started hunting them, the discontent might increase. She felt that the Lord needed to take action immediately. News also reached Su Ryu that people had started to tell people everywhere that fox blood was a medicine. The servant said that such rumors had begun to spread rapidly as of late. People were preparing for the hunt. Su Ra, with a satisfied face from the anticipation of the skirmish, said that she would like to take a look at someone who dared to start a war with foxes. She ordered her subordinates to find the person who first started spreading rumors about foxes. It was raining outside. Yi Habwa sat in her room and thought about her relationship with Seol Ho. She didn't know how to prove to him that she didn't intend to hurt anyone. Maybe she should have let him take advantage of her? He was probably acting like this because he also wanted to save his brother in his own way. He still considered her an enemy. She didn't understand why the higher powers were sending her back in time. Was it so that she could remember everything and repent for her mistakes? But what exactly had she done in the past? Suddenly, Yi Hebua heard the word master being said in the courtyard. She went to the window and saw Seol Ho holding an umbrella over the maid to take her to the building before returning to his office. Yi Hebua saw the nonchalance on his face and thought that still with others he could be kind, but alas, not with her. She clenched her fists and suddenly memories of their interactions began to flash in her mind. He'd seemed rude and cold all the time, and yet he'd said she couldn't escape him unless he himself allowed it. He kept her with him hardly out of hatred, for if he had, he would have killed her, or kept her in a dungeon and inflicted much more pain. However, even before he found out that she had gotten to the brink of death in the past, he was worried and tried to make sure she didn't hurt herself and let her die. She came to the conclusion that if he wanted her to change the past, he would have tried to use her. He wouldn't kidnap her and arouse her hatred. If Seol Ho wanted revenge and accidentally found out about her ability, then why didn't he tell her about her brother's death right away? Ye Choa decided to make another attempt to gain his trust. She came to Seol Ho's office. The fox asked her why she came. The girl replied that there was something she hadn't told him. Going back to her childhood when she is in a critical state, back when they were still on good terms, she could actually change the past and it reflected on the present. Her scars on her arms were an example of this. They weren't there until she created situations in the past where she got scratches. But the fox most likely already knew that. Seol Ho asked what she wanted to convey to him with that. Ye Hebwa said she wanted to go back in time again and save his brother. She was well aware that he didn't believe her, but that was her goal. That was why she was asking for his help. If he still didn't believe her, he could put shackles on her to let her do it. The white fox asked the girl why she was so concerned about his brother. Did she really think that if she saved him, her fate would somehow change? Yehewa replied that she wasn't thinking about her fate. She was doing it from the bottom of her heart because she loved Chi-Ho. The fox's eyes widened in surprise. There was no way he expected Ye Hua to admit that she loved Shi-ho. As if to herself, more confidently she said out loud that she really loved him. It was a confession to herself. His kind eyes and smile that made her forget about all her problems. It was simply impossible not to love him. When it became clear to her that Shi-ho might be dead, she realized her feelings for him. How could one forget about that? It's impossible to believe it, even when you realize its reality, and the pain feels incredibly intense. That's why she was willing to do everything in her power to save Shi-ho. And if Seol-ho didn't believe her, she should at least believe in the possibility of saving her brother. The evening came. After his conversation with Ye Hua, the fox spent the whole day in deep thought. The elderly maid called out to him several times, and he did not immediately respond, and when he came to his senses, he asked her, surprised and confused at the same time, what was wrong. She merely handed him his tea and asked him what he was thinking about. The fox accepted the cup and replied that it was nothing much. But then asked the woman if she had lost family in the past. The maid replied that she had. The lord then asked her if she was willing to take a risk that could bring her family back to life, but with no guarantee that it would work out. The woman replied that she would do it without a second thought and would even be willing to make a deal with the devil, and she did not understand those who might hesitate under such circumstances. These words were enough for the fox to make up his mind. He headed to Ye Hua's room and abruptly swung the doors open. Seol-ho went inside and Ye Hua looked at him in surprise. He said he didn't believe her because he was afraid she might do something again, so he asked her to prove her thoughts. Grabbing the girl by the chin, he said he would let her go back in time one last time, but if she failed or he thought she was doing something wrong, he would kill her with his own hands. Ye Hua was outraged and said that won't happen and she will definitely save everyone. With a kind look, Seol-ho said that he hoped so. Afterward, he lifted Ye Hua in his arms and threw him onto the bed. As he took off his belt, the girl asked in a panic, what was he going to do now? The fox replied that it wasn't on a whim that she was going into the past to do that. She had to get the fox energy from him. She had to let it into her. He removed Ye Hua's clothes and began to cover her with kisses. The girl covered her mouth while clutching the sheets around her. Suddenly, Fox asked why did she choose to marry Lee Jung? Was it because she was so available and could be easily obtained? Panting for breath, she said that Lee Jung was the only one left by her side when everyone close to her left her. People wanted to get their hands on her inheritance and she, having lost her memory, couldn't defend herself or answer anything to them. Lee Jung didn't turn his back on her despite the evil tongues in her direction, welcoming her into his home, and when he proposed to her, she accepted, to repay him with the same kindness he had shown her. It was gratitude. The fox rose and loomed over Ye Hua's face. Looking her straight in the eyes, he asked her how she would feel about him if the past changed. Would she be able to forget all the things he had done to her? The girl's look became sadder. She replied that she didn't know how she would act or if she would change. In response, she asked if he could live peacefully knowing what she had done to his brother. Those words stunned Seol-ho. He didn't expect that there would finally be sincerity between him and Ye Hua. She covered her eyes with her hand and said that only the current situation was important to her right now, and she only wished to save Shi-ho. Seol-ho touched her face and asked what was it about him. Did she want to kill him? Ye Hua exclaimed that she couldn't wish for such a thing. She didn't want to lose or hurt anyone. That was the truth. After hearing this, the fox's gaze finally warmed. Ye Hua anxiously asked him, when did he realize that she was going into the past? How did he manage to find out? The fox replied that while she was sleeping, he noticed that scars began to appear on her skin, and then memories of the past that weren't there before began to loom in his mind as memory began to change. The scars stopped appearing after he placed his mark on her leg, because with that spell he could keep track of how she moved in the past and prevented her from getting hurt again. He was controlling her actions. Ye Hua wanted to ask something else, but Seol-ho said that was enough, Everything else she should find out for herself. After that, he took off his clothes and pulled her by her legs to him. Yehachua said she didn't want him to hurt her again. She begged him to be gentler this time. Seolho said it would depend on how much of a goody-goody she was, and maybe he'd listen to her. He suggested that they try to adjust to each other together. Fox kissed Yehachua, then he merged with her. He touched her face with his hand and gently kissed her lips to make it easier for her to bear the pain. Looking her straight in the eyes, he asked her to relax. The girl asked him to slow down. Yehachua could feel herself getting hot. It felt like Seolho was tearing her up from the inside out, but she didn't want them to stop. Sweat dripped from Seolho's face right onto Yehua's cheeks. She touched his face with her fingers, and he immediately intercepted her palm, pressing it to his lips while closing his eyes. The girl felt something fluttering in her chest. She felt as if Seolho really loved her at that moment. She wrapped her arms around him, pulling him tighter against her, and running her hands into his hair, asking him to be quicker. Meanwhile, in the past, as a little girl, Yehachua had been kept on the edge of death. For weeks now, she hadn't regained consciousness. Her father became desperate and began to let all the servants go. As there was no point in caring for his daughter so much anymore, she was already barely breathing. The servants left, but Shiho asked the Lord if he would let her stay. The man allowed him, and then the nanny asked to stay as well. The master replied that he would like to talk to her and left the room, leaving Shiho alone with his daughter. Finally, the young man got his chance. He pulled out a knife from behind his sinus, and with a quick movement he slashed his palm, dripping blood directly into the girl's mouth and begging for her to come to her senses. In the present tense, Seolho told Yehachoi that he would hold back, but if he still crossed the line, she could slap him. He sped up, and surprisingly, Yehua asked him to be even tougher. Yehachua hugged Seolho tightly and breathed right in his ear. Fox was surprised that the girl was actually enjoying herself at this rate. It was the first time she was acting like this. He nuzzled into her neck, and Yehachua finally reached her limit. Stars shone around her. Her body instantly weakened, and she began to fall into sleep. Feeling a leaden heaviness spreading through her body, she thought that if she should stop breathing, then that would be the best thing to do. Let it happen now. The fox seemed to read her thoughts and grabbed her neck with his hand. Yehachua closed her eyes, and her body went completely limp. Seolho gave her one last kiss. Yehachua woke up in her room when she was living with her father. Sitting next to her was Shiho. He said he was happy that she finally woke up. The girl touched the top of his head with a weak hand and asked with a smile, why did he have such a worried expression on his face? It made her feel sad. Shiho began to cry, clutching Madam's hand in his palms. Yehachua smiled and continued stroking the young man's hair with her other hand. All this time, her father had been watching them from the crack of the door. He hadn't actually gone anywhere with the nanny, but had just stood in the hallway to see what Shiho would do. His suspicions turned out to be true. Everyone thought that a miracle had happened. There was no other way to explain it. Madame Yehachua, after suffering from the illness for a long time, had recovered in just a couple of days and was already standing on her feet, full of strength. The doctor told the gentleman that he had seen such a thing for the first time. Perhaps their prayers had reached heaven. Minister Seo replied to the healer that it was all a credit to his labors. Yehachua told her father that she was embarrassed that she had made them worry. He stroked her head and told her not to say that again. He was glad she was awake, and that was enough. Afterward, they hugged each other tightly. Shiho watched them in the crowd of servants and was very happy. In the evening of the same day, Yehachua noticed that the weather outside had changed a lot in the time she was past. It was already a different season of the year, meaning she had been sick for a very long time. Shiho said that the room was cool and started to close the window. Then he turned to Madame and she said that he must have been very worried about her. She heard that he had not left her side, nor had he slept or eaten. The young man replied that he had merely done what he had to do. Then the girl directly asked if the reason was because he was biding his time until he could drink her with his blood. Sadly, Yehua said that she knew everything. She knew that her health only improved when she drank his blood. Shiho's face showed shock and worry. The girl apologized to him for knowing everything, even though he had been careful to keep the truth from her. After all, he had saved her life, and she had done what she shouldn't have done, refused his help. Shiho exclaimed that she shouldn't apologize to him. He only did it because of his cowardice. After all, fox blood had side effects. He didn't want to lose his mistress, and so he decided to do so. He was afraid that she would hate him for having to take the consequences. He fell to his knees, and touching his forehead to the floor began to apologize to mistress. Yehejua leaned towards him and asked him how could she hate him. Shiho remained silent and didn't look at her. The girl thought about the fact that even though she was disgusted by being intimate with Sul-ho, she could only endure it because she imagined it was Shiho. She touched his hair and said that she couldn't blame him for anything. After all, he was doing all this for her, and she was being immoral. She asked him to look at her. The fox rose, and the girl took his palms in hers, after which she said that she loved him very much indeed. She loves and appreciates him much more than he himself thinks. He couldn't even imagine how much. This confession shocked Shiho. At these words, the girl's eyes glistened with tears, and the young man froze in surprise, not expecting to hear such a confession from his mistress. She then asked him not to feel guilty during such precious moments, as she wanted every day to be happy. Shiho only said the word madam, and at that moment the door to the room swung open and Sul-ho ran inside. He had only recently learned that Yehejua had come to her senses and was very eager to see her as soon as possible. He hugged the girl tightly and crying said that he was already afraid that he would never see her and she would never wake up, and he was madly happy that she had recovered. Yehejua hugged the boy back and apologized for giving them so much excitement and worry. Shiho looked at what was happening with a dumbfounded look and held his hand over his heart, which was pounding frantically after Madam's confession. Afterward, late in the evening, Shiho sat alone in the room to put his thoughts in order. He was still replaying in his head the words about Yehejua loving him. He thought he was crazy. It seemed to him that Yehejua expressed her love for him not as a friend, a servant that protects her, not as it would be if they were brother and sister. It seemed to him that Madam had fallen in love with him as a man. Could he have thought of her that way? He sadly began to suggest to himself that since the mistress was alive because of his blood, perhaps she had mistaken love for a sense of duty, that she felt she owed him her life. Besides, Madam was very young. She was still a child, and she had missed her. Lee Jung in her life, who was her age and was also very dear to her. He could be a good match for her, much closer in status and human nature. Shiho decided that even if Madam's words were sincere, she was still a young child, so she shouldn't take her words seriously, because things could change very quickly. In the present tense, Lee Jung was traveling in a carriage. He asked one of the servants to stop for a break. Suddenly, a dark silhouette appeared beside him. Red eyes looked at the young man, and then placed a sack over his head. When the sack was removed from Lai Zhang, he found himself in a place that was unfamiliar to him. In front of him sat Su Ra in human form, looking like a normal woman, with swarthy skin and dark hair. Li Jung didn't immediately realize that he had been captured by the foxes. He asked the girl who she was, and what was he doing here. Su Ra replied that she knew he was the one who first started spreading rumors about the foxes, so he should answer her questions. She then said that he was the reason why they were having more problems and people were invading their territory many times more often. Su Ra added that she already had a lot of things to do and asked Li Jung why he did it. Only now did he realize that he had ended up at the fox's place. He replied that during his wedding, a monster appeared in front of him and attacked him and took his wife, and he only wanted to get her back. Su Ra realized that it was about Yehejua, the girl who had tried to escape from Sul-ho's house earlier. With a smirk she asked, was it really about the white fox's favorite concubine? Li Jung shouted that Yehejua was not a concubine and demanded that she not insult his wife. He then said that, That monster was an enemy of Yehua's family, so he decided to kill her himself as well. Su-ra replied that when she saw that girl she was fine, she was unharmed. She also thought that that fox had infused her well with his energy. A memory flashed through Li Jung's mind that his mom and servants had reported that Yehua was dead, and the fox had only taken her body for himself. It turns out they had tricked him. Clenching his fists, Li Jung asked Su-ru to help him find his wife, and in return he promised to stop the rumors about the foxes. With a laugh in her voice, Su-ra asked if Li Jung knew what she had brought him here for. She then asked him, wouldn't it be beneficial for her to just kill him right now? Did he really think he really had something to offer? Li Jung said that if she helped him, he would be willing to fulfill her every wish. He had a high position in society, and he could easily get rid of the rumors so that no one would dare to say a word out loud after his order. He believed that even if Yehua was still alive, it didn't change the fact that the white fox was their enemy. Because of this monster, his wife's house had been destroyed. She had shown him mercy in the past, and he had done this to her. Li Jung can't leave her with this fox. At these words, Su-ra froze and then asked Li Jung to elaborate on this. Next events. Seol-ho, once again in the guise of his older brother, came in from hunting, looking around to see if anyone had seen him. Once inside the house, he placed the bag of loot on the shelf of the rack, then reincarnated back into his body. He remembered that because he was worried about Yehua's health, he had completely forgotten to tell Shiho about Su-ru. Now he wondered if he should have told her at all. She had taken care of everything, and it seemed that her father was no longer looking for them, and there were no rumors in the village. In the end, the fox decided that he would not bother his older brother, who already had a lot of worries. The next day, Li Jung came to visit Yehua. He decided to go as soon as he heard that his friend had recovered, but the servants wouldn't let him into the grounds of the ladies' chambers. The boy angrily asked why he couldn't go in, and the servant explained that he couldn't break the order not to let anyone in. Li Jung was upset. He had traveled a long way to come here and had even prepared a gift. The servant told the boy not to be upset and promised that as soon as Madam's health finally recovered, he would be able to visit her. With his side vision, Li Jung saw through the fence gate that Shiho was standing near the entrance to Yehua's chambers. He was laughing. The girl came outside wrapped in a very warm dress, a fur coat, and fur covering her ears and cheeks. She said her nanny made her put it all on and forbade her to go outside without it. With a blush on her cheeks, Shiho said Yehua looked really cute. Shiho began to put boots on Yehua's feet so that she could get down from the veranda. The girl said that there were no leaves on the trees at all. She hadn't had time to see the leaves fall because of her illness. Shiho remained silent with a sad look. When Yehua stood up, she reached out to the young man and asked him to carry her in his arms, as she could barely move her legs in such a multi-layered warm garment. Shiho took Yehua in his arms, and with blushing cheeks she snuggled up to him, and covered her eyes and said she felt good. Shiho lowered his gaze, his cheeks turning pink as well. He walked across the bridge over the pond to sit with the lady in the gazebo. Yehua said that after such a long illness, it was like everything was for the first time for her, as if this winter was the first time in her life. She was sorry they couldn't spend the fall together. Shiho said he was thinking about it too. He wanted to stop time so Yehua could see the seasons change. So he asked a craftsman to make a hairpin that would reflect the fall she missed. He apologized that the wrapping was plain and took out a gift from his pocket. Yehua opened the envelope and saw the marvelous hairpin that had golden leaves and pink flowers on it. Afterwards, she noticed that along with the hairpin was a bookmark. Shiho said that he made it himself, remembering the bookmark that Yehua had once given him. On the bookmark, he pictured bright orange flowers, representing the golden autumn. He wanted Yehua to experience the beauty of this time of year. The girl excitedly said that the hairpin and bookmark were very beautiful. After thanking her, she hugged Shiho tightly. Li Jung had been watching the whole time as he continued to stand at the gate. He was filled with jealousy and was very angry. On the way back home in the wagon with his parents, He sat there with a downcast look on his face as he replayed what he had seen. The anger was gone, only sadness remained. Li Zhong's mother noticed his condition and asked him why he was so sad. Was it because he couldn't meet Ye Hihua? Not getting an answer, she cheerfully said that they would meet next time. Li Zhong turned to her and asked if he and Dad could have made it so that he and Ye Hihua would get married. He then said that he loves Ye Hihua and she loves him too. So he wants to marry her and become a couple in the future. The parents laughed at such grown-up words from their son. His father asked him, did Li Zhong, the son of a simple merchant, really think of marrying the minister's daughter? Would it really work out? But then Li Zhong's mother told her husband that it could happen like this, because so far the minister had no other options. The little missus had poor health, and she didn't think that many people would want to take her as a wife. So would the minister then look at their shortcomings? The man pondered and said that indeed few people of the same position as the minister would want to arrange an engagement with a girl who could die at any moment, which meant that they, a merchant family, had every chance. But this didn't quite suit Li Zhong, and while his parents laughed, he continued to sit with a sad look. After meeting Li Zhong, Su-ra decided to have a couple drinks. She was annoyed that her departed guest was behaving like a proper human being, not being afraid of her and setting his own terms. Why did everything revolve around this Ye Hihua girl? They must have had a rich past. Remembering the white fox standing next to that girl, Su-ra became angry and clenched the shot glass in her fist. The glass shattered, and the shards cut the skin on her palm. The servant immediately became agitated and asked Madame to let her treat her wound as soon as possible. She ignored the request, and with a stern look, ordered her to catch the girl being held by the head of the white foxes. She needed to find out something from her, so she asked her to pass this order to their spy in the white fox house to distract her master, while they tried to steal Ye Hihua away. The elderly maid went into Yi Hao's chambers, where the head of the white foxes himself was guarding the girl's sleep. The woman told him to rest, and volunteered to look after the mistress herself. After all, he had not slept for days. Then she asked if the master had any feelings for this girl. She immediately thought that it was somehow strange. After all, he could make sure that she didn't cripple herself, but why would he do otherwise? He told everyone that Ye Hihua was his enemy, yet he personally courted her. Could it be that he loved her? The white fox lowered his gaze and said that it was nonsense. It was just that Ye Hihua was a tool that could be used. The maid then said that there was a war going on right now, with many spies everywhere who could attack the Lord at any time, so she thought that he shouldn't create a weak point for himself in this situation in the form of this girl. Fox reminded the woman that he had asked her earlier if there was a chance to save her family, would she act? Even though it might not work, and she had answered that she would make a deal with the devil. Now he asked her how she would act if she met her dead son again. The woman replied that she would embrace him for a very long time, as long as they had been apart. She then asked why he was asking her that. Seol Ho, with a warm look, said that he too would have liked to meet someone very dear to him. Evening came. Ye Hihua was looking at a bookmark while sitting in her room. Shi-ho told her that it was already late, and she should have gone to bed. The girl replied that she wanted to look at the presents some more. The young man was surprised that she liked the bookmark so much and apologized for not being good at making them pretty. Ye Hihua immediately began to argue that it was just the opposite. The bookmark came out very beautiful, and there couldn't be a better bookmark than one made with her own hands. Shi-ho smiled in response. Ye Hihua asked him if he could put a hairpin in her hair. She had nowhere to pin it this morning because of her clothes, so she asked to do it now. Shi-ho excitedly slid the hairpin through her loose hair, and said that it really suited her. Ye Hihua turned around and asked Shi-ho if he knew what his gift meant. Ye Hihua immediately thought it was unlikely that Shi-ho knew the meaning of the gift, and said she was just kidding. She then said that he was the first one to give her the hairpin and should definitely remember it. At this moment, Shi-ho remembered that when he went to the shop to get a handmade hairpin, the salesman asked him if he was going to give it to his girlfriend. The fox was confused then and asked why the man wanted to know that. The salesman replied that men give a hairpin to a woman when they offer their hand and heart, and was surprised that the guy didn't know that. Shi-ho, blushing, said he didn't, and with this gift he just wanted to express his feelings, nothing more. Now that Ye-hua herself had hinted to him about it, he realized that she was also aware of the meaning, and covered her newly blushing face with her hand, while the girl examined herself in the mirror with the hairpin in her hair. At that moment, the nanny came into the room and told Madam that she had to pick up Shi-ho. They need to go to the main building soon. It seems the master wanted to errand something. Yeheba asked the nanny what's wrong. The elderly woman replied that Madam didn't need to worry. Shi-ho went out, and the nanny told him that the master's workers got into trouble while going over the mountain. Therefore, they urgently needed help. Shi-ho arrived at the scene and saw many bloody corpses. The villagers and Minister Seo's servants were collecting the corpses, covering them with sheets. Shi-ho joined them. He noticed that the wounds of the dead were deep. These people didn't die immediately. Their legs and shoulders had been hit first, and they had agonized for a while before dying. He recalled rumors that there had been a recent raid on the stables. The criminals had started coming down into the village and attacking people. What was even more horrifying was that they were only killing for fun. Shi-ho realized with horror that the fox hunt had begun. The next day, Lee Jung came to visit Ye-hua. He said that Mom and Dad had seen the corpses and said they were scary to look at. The bodies were ripped open and all the insides were out. Such details made Ye-hua and the babysitter sitting next to her feel sick. Lee Jung apologized and explained that he had forgotten what he was saying because Ye-hua herself had asked for more details. He then said that Ye-hua didn't need to worry. They had already made arrangements with her father. They would choose the best warriors to be sent to her house to guard her around the clock. This news horrified Ye-hua. If they were guarded, it would be hard for foxes to slip through, and Sol-ho wouldn't be able to hunt. She had heard that foxes couldn't get energy from human food. If they couldn't hunt, it would become a big problem. Ye-hua became very upset. When evening came, she told Shi-ho about it. He wasn't happy about the guards being put up either. Ye-hua explained that her family had suffered great losses, so she thought that there would be more surveillance in and around the house. She asked Shi-ho how long Sol-ho could go without her usual food. Should she ask her to bring meat for them? A distressed Shi-ho replied that Sol-ho wouldn't be able to regain energy from just consuming food. The energy that hunting gives him plays a huge role. Only with it could he learn to control his strength. That way, Sol-ho would never lose his sanity due to hunger. Ye-hua then said that she would definitely tell her father that she doesn't like having a lot of people around her and asked him not to put guards in the courtyard. If Sol-ho manages to slip past the other warriors, he can hunt without any problems. She asked Shi-ho to tell Sol-ho not to delay in hunting and come back as soon as possible. Shi-ho said Ye-hua had a gloomy look and asked if she was still worried about Sol-ho. The girl replied that Lee Jung came by today and told her that some of his relatives had been killed. Their corpses were in a horrible state and she thought that foxes were involved. She then asked if her suspicions were correct, but Shi-ho remained silent. Then she herself answered for him that she was right. Then she said that everything was calm, so why did it start again? Shi-ho was silent, but in his mind he said that he didn't know why things were quiet, but it started happening again when Madam came to her senses. The last incident happened quite close to Madam's house. She reminded Shi-ho that she already knew he had fed her his blood and asked him to tell her everything without secrecy, everything he knew. She assumed it was all happening because of her and confessed that to the fox. He asked why she thought that. She said that all those foxes they had encountered before said that she gave off a sweet scent that attracted them, and she thought that this time was the same reason. Shi-ho honestly told her that fox blood has a few side effects such as the sweet fragrance. People with fox blood become a delicacy. The more a person drinks it, the more it starts to exude that fragrance. Ye-hua covered her mouth in surprise and said it was a nightmare. Shi-ho asked Madam not to worry and promised that he would protect her until his last breath. Ye-hua asked Shi-ho not to say that, after all this is happening because he wanted to save her. She was now worried that innocent people in the house might die because of her. No, someone had already died because of what was happening. She clutched her forehead and said in horror that if the foxes were to kill everyone who got in their way, and if more innocent people died, she didn't know what she would do. Shiho grabbed Yehechua by the shoulders and said that won't happen because the foxes aren't just after her. They like to hunt groups of people. They have a habit of playing with their victims. They would kill people without even knowing about Yehewa's existence. It's not her fault. There's no need to worry about it. Ye told Shiho that she was grateful to him for trying to support her, but now they needed to find a solution. If that sweet flavor attracts foxes, maybe she shouldn't drink his blood? Shiho said that it was impossible to stop drinking the blood or she would get sick again. On the contrary, she should drink it more often and more because the amount of blood she consumes increases as she grows and develops. Yehewa asked the fox what would happen to him if she started drinking more blood. Wouldn't he get in trouble? Shiho replied that he thought the side effects would show up even more, but he doesn't know how much. There is not enough information on this topic, probably because it's forbidden, or most of the foxes died before the side effects manifested. He apologized for not being able to give more information. Yehechua hugged Shiho and said she didn't accuse him of anything, so he had to apologize. She then asked if maybe they should hide together in some secluded place where no one would find them. Shiho, hugging Yehechua back, thought that Madame had spent her whole life in this confined space, but because of him, even in this small room, she couldn't find peace. He gave her blood to drink so that Madame could live, but he can't watch her spend her whole life in fear. He said he knows that living in hiding is incredibly scary. If she can't take it anymore, she should tell him that, and then he will make her free. Yehechua asked Shiho, what was he talking about? Was there really another way? The young man looked at her with a very detached look. Yehechua knew exactly what that look was. She had exactly the same look before she met Shiho. That look meant a complete willingness to die at any moment and a loss of zest for life. And then, quite simply realizing the truth, she said that he was going to die and give his life to her. Shiho's yellow eyes opened wide in surprise that the girl had realized everything, and her face reflected horror and shock. She saw his love for her without any words by his actions and looks alone. He had given her the will to live, so why would he choose to leave her so easily now? In the present tense, a letter arrived at Li Zhang's house. The young master asked the servant who the letter came from. The man replied that the person had not introduced himself and said that the master would figure it out for himself. After reading the letter, Li Zhang arrived at the appointed place, a house in the middle of the forest that was saturated with the dark energy of foxes. Inside, Sura was sitting at a table. The young man asked the fox woman, how did she know where he lived? And why had she sent that letter? She replied that she needed to contact him somehow, or did he want her to break into his house in person? He pounded on the table and yelled at her to stop joking around. He then said that since she knew where he lived, she could easily harm him and his family. Sura noticed with a smirk that he was getting nervous. However, when he put her clan in danger for gain, he should have anticipated that he would have to pay for it. Had he dared to do so without realizing the consequences? She said that Li Jun's behavior was somehow simple. Would he stop acting like a boy from a well-to-do family? She then said that since he had come, they should discuss how they would lure out the head of the white foxes. She thought that people should recruit enough warriors. She also said that Li Jung should cooperate with her if he wanted his wife back. In the past, it snowed in Yehewa's house. Little Seol Ho opened the window to the girls' room and called out to mold snowballs together. Yehewa replied that she would love to play with him. Shiho asked Madame to stay, but she replied that she had already eaten, drank her medicine, and would dress warmly, so nothing would happen to her. First, she and Seol Ho drew pictures in the snow using sticks, and then, together with Shiho, they began rolling large balls to make a snowman. They weren't wearing mittens or gloves, and Yehewa's fingers soon became very cold. Shiho ran inside to fetch a warming stone, an ordinary stone heated in advance in the coals so that Madam could warm her hands. While he was gone, Seol-ho began to breathe steam on his girlfriend's hands to warm them, eventually leaning them against her neck and cheeks. The girl said she didn't need to do that because her hands were too cold, but the boy replied that he was warm, and when he was turned foxy, he was even warmer. Yaetoa imagined holding a warm animal in her arms, and she liked that fantasy. Then Sol-ho said that Shi-ho is even warmer, and when he turns into a fox, his fluffy tail alone can completely envelope you and keep you warm. Shi-ho came back and held out to the mistress the stone he had put in his pouch. The girl looked at it, imagining the fluffy fox, and he asked why it was being looked at so intently. She waved her hand, and together with Seol-ho, with a smile on her face, she replied that it was nothing. After the walk, they sat down in the house and started roasting yams on the coals and playing cards. Seol-ho really liked laying out the colorful cards. Afterward, they collected paper cranes and other origami and eventually went to bed. As Seol-ho and Yaetoa fell asleep, Shi-ho covered them with a blanket and stroked the girl's cheek with his index finger. In her sleep, she reacted and rubbed her cheek against him in return. Meanwhile, in reality, the white fox was doing the exact same motion with the sleeping adult Yaetoa. Yaetoa woke up in the middle of the night and found Seol-ho sleeping next to her while Shi-ho leaned over them and fell asleep in a sitting position. Sol-ho was sleeping restlessly. Yaetoa fixed him up and wrapped him better with a blanket, then brushed his bangs away from Shi-ho's face. Stroking his face, she remembered that he intended to sacrifice himself for her. She was so much mistaken. She thought if she could prove that she wasn't going to be harmed, if she could keep a good relationship, the future would change. And that could appease the white fox, but it wasn't like that. The more their relationship improved, and the closer she got to Shi-ho, the faster the length of his life shortened. The only chance to stop this tragedy is for her to die herself. If she died, Shi-ho and Sol-ho would live. The black foxes wouldn't attack people approaching the village because of her sweet scent, and her family wouldn't be killed. The next day, Yaetoa called Nanny over to her and said she wanted to ask her something. She handed her a sheet of paper and asked if she could get everything on the list. She replied that she would try her best. Seol-ho was hunting wolves in the evening when he reincarnated as his older brother. He heard rustling nearby and came to the sound and found Suru, who had also used a sickle to kill several beasts. He said that it had been a long time since they had seen each other, and on the fly asked if she could ask her father to order the foxes not to attack people and not to go down to the villages. Of course, she had already done so much for him, and he was asking her again, so he apologized for that. She yelled for him not to ask her for anything else. Her state of mind was at breaking point. She was very angry. It turned out that her father was very sick and could no longer be the head of the foxes. Because of this, the counselors began to actively train her, as there was no one else to put in the place of the leader. But they were not happy with her, and said that she was inferior to her father and not capable enough to be a leader. She studied 24 hours a day, but she still wasn't good enough. Her father wouldn't come out of his bedroom and just sat on his bed staring into the void. After she heard the counselors criticizing her, she went to him and saw how his face was drained and bruises appeared under his eyes. She bowed to him and laid her head on her father's lap, and then lied that everyone thought she was talented and would make a fine head. Dad chuckled and said she couldn't be the leader because the real head of the foxes was young. Eyes stood in her eyes as she told this to Shi-ho. All her energies went into preserving her father's reputation, finding a way to bring him back to what he was before, studying and meeting the expectations of the counselors to become the new head. Seol-ho in the guise of Shi-ho apologized and said he should have asked how she was doing right away. He was really sorry. The girl in turn apologized for not being able to restrain the foxes yet, causing them to come down to the humans and attack the humans. She didn't have enough power and authority to restrain them all yet, and they felt free to behave like that. Seol-ho leaned over and said that he thought she was doing everything perfectly. Others would have run away a long time ago if they were her, but she keeps moving forward. He encouraged his friend and said that she would definitely handle everything, it would just take a little time. He then added that if things get hard for her, she should definitely tell him. He's always willing to listen to her. Su-ra still cried and immediately began to wipe her face with the sleeves of her clothes. After hunting, they walked together along the trail until they reached a fork. She said that they were in a real state of chaos right now, and she immediately wanted to settle the problems with the foxes starting to descend on the humans, but she had more important things to do. And then she asked if it wouldn't be better if he went along with her.
So, we look forward to your comments about this story. To not miss new videos, please subscribe to notifications. Thanks for watching.